apparently broken clocks are right twice a day. Because in 2011, Daryl Issa started an investigation into, which let me just double check the name, Operation Chokepoint, because he believed that the Department of Justice was putting restraints or trying to limit gun dealers' access to bank accounts in order to do an end around and take away our Second Amendment. Those bastards. But during the course of this investigation that was started on questionable means, Daryl Issa might have actually found something. Apparently, the Department of Justice has been intimidating banks that give bank accounts to groups that they don't like. In some very rare cases, there are guns and ammo dealers in that mix, but also included are payday lenders who are being intimidated by the government. Pawn shops, weirdly, are being intimidated and denied loans by the government. People who sell not marijuana but marijuana paraphernalia, so like bongs or hookah pipes and stuff like that, and porn actresses are being denied their bank accounts. Now, during ICE's review, which is funny because he kind of stopped caring about this issue when he found out it wasn't all about guns. During ICE's review, it came out that 50 subpoenas were sent out to institutions, and it was based on the fact that they are serving people who work in these lines of in these types of industries. So these are legal and lawful industries that the government just doesn't like, and this is supposed to be a program to discourage fraud and discourage money laundering, which is weird because we all know that HSBC can launder all the drug and Al-Qaeda money that they want without any issues. So I'll throw the question to my panel, or Jeff's panel. Do you guys think that Daryl Issa accidentally found something that's substantive?
Maybe. Like, I was reading about this, okay, and the Operation Chokepoint, which is, by the way, like kind of an ominous name a little bit, but when you kind of read through it and you see what their intent was, I'm not so much. I'm really kind of split on this one. Like, this is sort of a difficult thing. Like, obviously they shouldn't be going after porn actresses' bank accounts. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, going after that or payday lenders. But there is a good reason to have something like this, to actually have like a program like this to go after, like, people laundering drug money and people who are committing actual crimes. So, like I said, mixed on this, I think that there's a need for something like this. Like, we could use it in a good way, but going after porn actresses and stuff like that, like legal entities, because you might not like them or approve of them, that's obviously fucked up and wrong and a waste of our resources, by the way. So if ISA actually found this and follows up on it, I'm going to hate it, but I'll give him credit for it.
And I just want to point out there's a difference between stated intent and actual intent. Their stated intent is perfectly reasonable. They want to find fraud. They want to protect the consumer. They want to stop drug dealers from laundering money. But the actual intent is they are going out and intimidating groups of people that are unpopular. These are unpopular industries. And one of the things that
bullshit. Porn is not an unpopular.
But an unpopular societally. So what they're actually doing is they're not passing any laws, or they're not doing anything. It's really intimidation. If you serve these type of clients as a banking institution, then you will get more subpoenas than banks that don't serve them. So you're incentivizing banks to drop people's bank accounts. And like, we've seen this with marijuana in the past. Like, they wouldn't let legal medical marijuana people use banks. So we know that this happened in the past to industries that the government didn't like. I'm just saying, I didn't know it was this widespread.
Well, I was going to say, right or wrong, marijuana is at the federal level, which I believe it should be legal. Like, everybody knows that I'm definitely in favor of legalization at the federal level and at the state levels. But technically, if they're going after something like that's an illegal industry, marijuana is illegal. Now, medical marijuana may be legal in the states, and that's where you get into like the states' rights issues and everything, and it's still illegal at the federal level. So if you're going after marijuana using this, like, I don't like it. But if you're going to go after illegal things, then you have to go after
It,
all the illegal
it
things
makes it,
until it changes.
the marijuana makes more sense than the legal industries that are legal nationwide.
Right.
Go to
Right.
Georgia.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Oh, I'm so glad that Sean chimed in there because I was going to have to agree with Sean, but then he jumped in with Jeff. If the way that Sean presented the story, if I understand it correctly, they're not going after marijuana. They're going after like hookah shops and stuff like that. And so to Jeff's point, that something like this, I'm sorry, I don't want to misquote you, Jeff. You said, you see the need for something like this, and it's a good thing, but it's probably not right or whatever. No, man, not at all. Like this is
to go after illegal industries. Let's be clear. Like if something like this is needed to go after illegal industries, like money laundering and illegal drugs, like the drug cartels, totally for something like that. Like, because you want to choke off their money.
But that's not what they're doing.
Right?
They're not trying to catch bad actors in the act of acting poorly. They're trying to stop they're putting pressure on banks who are doing a legal service that could possibly be abused. And that's not the way to do this. And I say this, hey, as someone who used to own a hookah lounge, there are a ton of shady players in that game, man. Like, I had to fight that reputation so much, and you guys know, like, I'm the one on the panel who's probably the most anti-weed out of all of us. But I still, I had to fight that reputation. Like, I had to kick people out of my store for because they thought that I was, in on this, like, drug game with them. And I'm like, no, not only do you have to get out of my store, but I'm going to call the police on you. Like, this is not what I'm doing. I totally understand where that's coming from, and it gives, like, responsible business owners like I was at the time, like, it gives us a bad name. But that said, the way to catch people doing bad is to catch people when they're doing bad. Like, you don't go, like, try to stifle small business growth by not letting banks loan to these people. We can all agree, like, the porn industry has a lot of shady players. Gun sale in the gun industry has a lot of shady players. You guys probably didn't know this as much as I do, being from the industry, but the hookah industry has a lot of shady players. But the way then to stop that is to catch bad people doing bad things, not stop good people from doing legitimate things. And this is just another example of it's a lot. It smacks a lot of Fast and Furious to me. We're rather than like trying to catch people doing bad things, the government kind of overstepped its bounds and either forced business owners to do something illegal, and then whatever it screwed up came after the business owners for doing what they were forced to do, or forced business owners to not do something that was illegal and would lean on them if they were loaning money out to these industries the government didn't like. And that's just an overreach of power, man. Like, no liberal and no conservative is for this. This violates both sides' principles. This is just bad governance.
And I just want to point out that this is, like, it's really, like, it's intimidation, and it's almost like you're blacklisting people, because, like, I can understand theoretically, like, you want to target certain groups that commit crimes, but you can't cast such a broad net that you're catching people that you think might be associated with crimes. Like, that doesn't make any sense. There's a Reason article that I shared with all these guys too that talked about specifically the porn actress who her husband can't get loans anymore. Like, they can't get a mortgage because and her husband's not even in the porn industry, but he can't get a mortgage because they're married and their social security numbers are linked. This is strippers. This is, like, all different industries that are frowned upon by society, but perfectly legal and legitimate, that just can't get loans or can't get access to bank accounts. And then you put pressure on secondary lending institutions like pawn shops and and then payday loans. It seems like a weird way of addressing this problem. And also, when the government talks on the other side of their mouth about helping people get access to banking, underserved in the banking community is the term that they use, that they make people underserved on purpose.
All right, so I'm looking in The Guardian, okay. They wrote up a piece on this. They said that, quote, the theory behind Operation Chokepoint is that they can cut off access that scammers and fraudsters have to banks. Now, if it's a legitimate industry, leave it the fuck alone, right? And I totally agree with you guys on that. But I don't think that it's quite as nefarious as you guys, at least not the intent, is quite as nefarious as you guys seem to put it. Now, I could be wrong, right? But what they're looking for is credit card schemers, people that do illegal gambling online, escort services, Ponzi schemes, and, of course, payday loans, which can disproportionately affect low-income people because they are underserved.
I totally forgot about
a lot of great points.
I totally forgot about the online gambling, but it's legal online gambling that they're also shutting people's bank accounts out. What they're supposed to go for is the pyramid and the Ponzi schemes. But
so maybe they need a little bit more oversight, and to try and reduce the scope of their mission to only go after people who are actually committing crimes.
Right, and
leave the porn actresses alone.
And that's then let me. Sorry, so let me point out what I bet some of our viewers might be thinking right now. The payday lender one, my gut, my Libby McLiberson, values or whatever, is to totally give them a pass on that one because they're, at least I'm not familiar with any. I could totally be wrong. By all means, we've got some honest, hard work, greater good of the community payday lenders out there. Feel free to let us in on your business model because you're not the ones we're seeing commercials for. But payday lending, that's a shady industry. All right, it's not like porn that lends itself to a lot of shadiness, or hookah that lends itself to a lot of shadiness, but it's not inherently shady. Payday lenders that's a flat out that's a bad industry, but it's legal. That's a failure of our legal system. So if we're going to let that be legal, even though it's shady, then you have to let banks loan to them. So I hate saying that, but it's true. The answer is crack down on that through legislation. But you can't not make it legal and then come after banks for doing their job.
There's a point I don't want to get into about payday lenders because I want to stay on point. But they're actually the result of a crackdown on pawn shops. But the big problem with this, and I don't know if I'm quoting Isa or somebody else mentioned the story, is that instead of targeting people who commit crimes like HSBC, we've all heard that story that they laundered drug money for Al Qaeda and the Mexican drug cartels, and they basically paid a fine that was a small percentage of what they laundered. Instead of targeting people who are committing crimes, what the Department of Justice is in effect doing, forget about whether they're intending to do bad, is they're using a weird prior restraint, and they're basically intimidating or indirectly giving the banks the signal that they shouldn't do business with these quote-unquote undesirable people. And that's wrong. You can't do that. It's weird because you're kind of depriving people of their bank accounts, sort of, because you're not actually through law doing it, but you're basically through intimidation doing it. So it's this weird, I'm going to say mistake because I don't want to assume evil, that the Justice Department is sending the wrong signal to the people that they're trying to regulate.
Okay, so once again, I'm looking through more stuff because I was actually wanting to find what Isa was trying to do. Now, Daryl Issa is actually requesting that the Department of Justice, the DOJ, turn over documents and communications related to the operation since January 2011. Now, that's to determine whether or not Operation Chokepoint was unfairly targeting businesses, actual legitimate businesses like your payday lenders and everything, which, okay, so I'm fine with, because definite, if they're unfairly targeting the businesses, and that can be proven, obviously I want something to be done about it, right? But I also think that there does need to be some oversight of the banks and who they lend to at the same time, right? And that's why I'm saying you should leave the regular, a lot of these regular legitimate businesses alone and go after anything that throws up the red flag. Now, the definition of a red flag would be high return rates and high-risk merchants, as put forth by regulators.
But the high return rate, if you look at it, it's 3%. 3% is not a high return rate.
It should be 15%, and I will argue that I agree that it should be a higher rate, and that's what like government should be about, is coming together and figuring out what works best. I don't agree that it should be at 3%. Like 15% would be much more. 15% would be much better. So they need to tweak this, and I do agree that we should do some oversight to try and tweak this to see where we went wrong. But I don't like the idea of trashing it all together, and I also don't like the idea of painting this as completely villainous government overreach either, because I think there's good intentions.
And for those of you who are like, well, why is 15% a better number than 3%? 3% of transactions over a month, just think about it as an individual basis. Like, we're like middle class to broke people on this panel. And sometimes people in this group, and I'm not naming any names, will do this thing called floating a check, where you don't have the money, but you know you're getting paid by that day. And sometimes when you try that trick to pay your electricity or whatever, like, and you hope that you get paid in time for the check to go through, you timed that wrong. And that's a bounce back transaction. If you don't make a lot of transactions that month, that goes to your 3%, and you could be targeted and maybe pushed out of your bank account. That's crazy.
That's exactly why we need to go back and take a look at some of these regulations and tweak them, instead of doing what Daryl Issa wants to do, I assume, and that's just completely get rid of all of this and say, you can't do that at all. This is a horrible thing. Government overreach, can't do it. No, there's got to be something there.
To be fair to Issa, I don't think he's saying that. His number is 15%.
And you know what? I'll agree with him on that one, because there is economic reality that sometimes things will get returned. You know, there will be things that normal people do that might set off these red flags if they're too arbitrarily low. So you need to set it in a reasonable area, and I mean, that's what I argue for, and that's what any sensible person should argue for.